Hi everyone, my name is Daniil and this is my recap of Game 9, where Jan played white, and for the first time in the match, Ding faced the Ruy Lopez, not by playing a6 but playing knight f6, inviting Jan to the Berlin defense, which basically has no way out, so d3 was played, bishop c5, c3, castles, castles, d5 is one of the most topical lines, knight b2, d2, d takes c4, d takes c4, a5, we are still following the very main theory, a4, queen e7, queen c2. Ding played this very nice move, knight b8, which, the same maneuver was actually used by Hikaru Nakamura in some of his games. The idea is to play c6 and then to bring the knight to d7 or a6, as this pawn on c3 is normally limiting this knight very well. Jan played rook e1, rook d8, h3, h6. This is all good, and we only have like about 15 to 20 minutes, so we will not check all the opening details. Both played well, knight f1, c6, bishop c4, knight a6, knight g3, queen c7 is a very interesting and remarkable concept. So black wants to play bishop f8 and then play knight to c5 and eventually get b7, b5. It's very important for him to actually play bishop f8, as this bishop will protect the king nicely. Jan played bishop a2. b5 is a logical reaction, as well. This was one of the ideas for black anyway. Jan played queen e2, and rook b8 happened, which many people did not quite like, me included. And the normal move here was bishop f8, and well, it basically doesn't have a single downside compared to rook b8. If not, a takes b5, and then if white takes the pawn, then after knight c5, black has a lot of compensation, and the perfect engine line here is b4, knight d3 attacking the rook, rook d1, bishop a6, now queen takes a5 is a must, queen takes c3, bishop d2, and then after something like queen c2, the game should finish in a draw rather soon. I think in fact it's just rook c1, takes, and something like this. It's just a draw by force. So bishop f8 was a better move. Ding played rook b8, though, which is not too bad. But after knight h4, he ended up playing bishop f8 anyway. As we said before, black really needs this bishop on f8 to actually avoid getting checkmated. Jan played queen f3. Another option was actually playing knight g6. And, well, knight takes f8 is kind of an achievement for white, and in case of bishop d6, he has this interesting idea. And then he wants to push his pawn forward, and it seems to be very interesting too. So queen f3 was played instead, which is not worse. B takes a4, bishop takes h6, knight c5. This is all normal. Black gave up his h-pawn, which means his king is in danger, but at least he managed to create the counterplay over the b file. So now rook takes b2 is a threat. Jan played knight g6 here, which is normal. Another interesting option was bishop g5. In general, this position is all about the exchange sacrifices. So here's one, rook d3, queen e2 is the best move. Then as bishop takes f6 is a threat, black plays knight h7, and after bishop e3, he actually takes on e3 and takes on b2. And what I liked most about this line, white seems to be a little bit better, although as the numbers were dropping, but after rook e2, one of the options is actually playing rook b3, or offering one more exchange. And it seems to be more or less okay for black. Black is under some pressure, but as engine says, it's something like 0.3. Knight g6 was played by Jan, which is also normal. Ding took on b2. Another option was playing rook d3 here, which was also interesting. He took, which is kind of okay. And the position I wanted to talk about is actually knight takes f8, where Ding took on f8 instantly with the rook, which is unfortunately, it is probably the best move. But in fact, black had so many cool alternatives here that actually show I mean, how rich the position was. So first of all, he had knight b3, after which I guess white takes, and then plays bishop g5, and then he plays exactly, I think, c4, followed by queen c3, which is a problem. Second, so this resource of c4 is actually very important. Secondly, one more option is rook d3. Now, it's very tempting to play rook e3, but then after rook d2, d2, black is actually okay. Black is ignoring this knight on f8 completely. And the line I liked a lot is knight h5. Black has to take on e4, and then there is actually this line. Check, queen takes, rook g3 check, king h8 is only move, bishop g7 check, king g8 is only move, and it is scary, but it seems that white has to repeat. So the problem with rook d3 is actually bishop e3, after which, well, white has some pressure in some, crazy lines. So the point is that for the time being, king takes f8 is not available. So black, I think, has to play something like knight b3, and some craziness continues, which I don't even feel like, sharing, as this is not the way humans play. One more interesting option was knight to d3, where the funny thing is that after rook e2, black just wants to play a3, just saying your knight is not going anywhere. And actually, if it is going, then the point is to play king h7, attacking two minor pieces and actually capturing one, and there is no checkmate. So white has to do something else, where black will just take on f8, and he will be okay. So the main move here is rook e2 d1, and then this craziness actually starts. So the move for black here is not rook takes f2, as you might think, but bishop g4. And the point is that after h takes g4, rook takes f2, queen e3, black takes, and then he has prepared knight takes g4. And then he plays some queen b6 check, and he's okay in some crazy lines. So the line goes knight e6. I mean, obviously. Rook takes f3, knight takes e7, rook takes g3. I think bishop g5, rook b8. Then some rook is coming to b2, black will take on e4. Some craziness continues, white is a piece up, black is attacking, and he has many passed pawns. And it seems that white is a bit better, but I mean, black is not even close to the line and has to draw with the best play, which I kind of failed to, imagine in a game between humans, even if they're very good at chess. So this was knight d3. Ding played rook takes f8, which is actually also okay. Jan played bishop g5, which is easy to explain. So both players saw the idea of bishop c1, which was actually a better move here, as rook c2 doesn't work, as I think in this line, for some reason, queen e3 is a very important resource. So basically, this king on f8 allows queen c5 with a check, and white will use that, which is not obvious at all, to be honest. And after bishop c1, black has to play rook b5, just like in the game, and white is a bit better. So Jan did a very logical thing to me. He played bishop g5, provoking knight h7, and then he played bishop c1, which looks extremely logical, as, I mean, after rook b5, which Ding played, this knight is clearly much worse than the one on f6. But the problem with that was actually that rook c2 was completely fine, and it's kind of hard. I mean, I can understand that it's hard to even consider rook c2, but once you start thinking about it, you can realize quite quickly that there is no way for white to capture this rook. For instance, after bishop b1, we have this fork. After queen d1, we have rook takes c3. And after bishop a3, which is the key line, we have knight b3, and then when white takes. For some reason, it's very important to capture with a knight, as I said before, and yeah, black is even better here, actually. So after rook c2, black was just completely fine, and white had to allow some trades after, let's say, something like this. And then he will get all the pawns back, and the game will probably finish in a draw. Dink played rook b5 instead, which is understandable. Bishop h3, normal move. Rook a8, rook d8 was also decent. Bishop c4, bishop e6. And this was a very important crossroad for Jan, where he basically had three options, which are bishop takes b5, bishop takes e6, and bishop f1. Bishop takes b5 you don't want to play in general, I guess. It's kind of easy for me to understand why he didn't want to do that. Also, the engine is quite happy for white after queen e3, followed by something like rook b1, followed by, I think, knight f5. And still, it's not obvious at all, and the numbers are not dramatically bad for black. White is pressing, but it's not even close to be lost. And it's kind of very understandable that you don't want to take on b5, changing the pawn structure completely. The problem with bishop f1, which looks smart, is that black basically has ways of playing where you have to capture anyway. Let's say after knight f6, I guess rook a to d1, and something like rook b8. The engine actually wants you to take again, which is in some of the lines a better version, and in some of the lines is a worse version. But in general, again, you're forced to do something you don't want to do. So this is why Jan took on e6, which is once again understandable. But objectively, bishop takes b5 was probably the best move. Knight takes e6, knight f5, c5. Jan played queen e2, basically heading for a draw, planning queen c4 followed by queen takes a4. If he wanted to play for a win here, there was bishop c1. Although, once again, the engine was optimistic at first, but then he says that after knight f6, black is more or less okay. It's something like 0-20. Whenever white takes a pawn, there is normally rook b1, pinning the bishop. And it seems to me that, I mean, both for humans and engines, it feels like black has enough counterplay. Jan played queen e2 instead, which left Dink with a completely normal position after rook b3, queen c4, queen c6, bishop c1. So white is about to take the pawn back. Black is in time to activate his pieces with knight f6, queen takes a4. As Irina mentioned, it's important that rook takes a4 runs into rook takes c3. So this is why Jan took on a4, queen takes a4, rook takes a4. And here Dink took on c3, which is not objectively too bad, but well, it gives white like a very tiny edge for like the next 50 moves or so. And it's also a bit depressing that Dink did not even consider so many good moves that he had. One of the most obvious ones is rook a8, I guess, where after something like, for instance, knight e7 check, king h7, knight c6, knight d7, black is just completely fine, and white does not have a single reason to actually think that he is better. If he takes on a5, black will eventually take on c3. Knight d7 is, I think, also a very decent move here. Preparing rook takes c3, the way that prevents white from playing bishop b2 followed by bishop takes c5. Nevertheless, Dink played rook takes c3, bishop b2, rook b3, bishop takes c5, rook b4, which he probably expected to be a dead draw, and indeed he managed to trade quite some material after rook takes a5, rook takes e4, takes. But Jan came up with this annoying idea of rook a4 that kind of forces black to solve some problems. And after quite some thinking, Dink came up with knight d4, which is solid way of holding this, but white then has an extra pawn for the rest of the game. Actually, knight d2 works here indeed, as we mentioned on stream. After rook g4, there is this brilliant resource of playing knight f4, which is completely insane. And well, the key idea is that, like, whenever white takes on f4, there is rook e1 check, followed by the perpetual after knight f1, knight g2, knight f1, and so on. And yeah, I mean, black has to see this king h8, which is absolutely insane. But then if you think about it, yes, indeed, white bishop has to go, so it kind of works. But yeah, looking at it after the game, I realized that actually knight h6 check exists too. And then black has to come up with even more absurd king h7, knight takes f7, knight e2 check, king h2, king g8, rook takes g7, king f8, and for some reason this is 0-0, despite black giving up his whole material. So it feels like white probably cannot really unpin, so rook takes c5 is a threat. If the bishop goes, then the rook can attack the bishop, and after rook h7 there is king g8. And this is why this whole thing works, which is not the way humans play. So after quite some thought, Dink played knight d4, forcing bishop takes d4 and rook takes d4, after which both played reasonably well. I think at some point Dink kind of missed something and was really worried, as in this position after he managed to trade rooks, knight e5, g5, it seems to me that he was really worried after this move h4. Another try was king e3, but actually, I mean, we were worried a little bit for Dink on air, but yeah, the extension confirms that after king e7, f4, king f6, I mean, objectively, it's a very, very long way to lose this as black. And it's important that even, so here we wanted g4, which works, but even this position that we thought is bad is okay, as knight c8 followed by knight e7 exists, and then it's important for black to have the check from g6. Jan played h4 instead, after which Dink played g takes h4, king e4, h3, takes king e7, and this was the last key moment of the game. It's very important that white is not in time with king g5, as there is knight e4 check followed by knight takes f2, and then yeah, Dink managed to bring his king to f6, after which as the game ended in a draw without too many interesting things. So we'll have a FIDE tomorrow, and come join us, people, the day after tomorrow to watch game 10, where Dink will play white and try to strike back again.